In 2005, the Mario Party series was going really strong, with 6 mainline entries that all sold pretty well. By this time, Mario Party had really established itself as the leading name in the party game genre. These games were obviously always on consoles, since console gaming is a much more ideal place for a party game experience. However, Hudson Soft decided to challenge themselves and create a Mario Party for the Game Boy Advance, which does support multiplayer gameplay, but would definitely need to get a little creative since multiplayer was significantly more challenging on the Game Boy Advance than on the GameCube. So, welcome back to Mark's Rec Room, where today we'll be talking about Mario Party Advance, the first handheld entry. Right off the bat, this episode is going to be a bit of a weird one. Usually on the Mark's Rec Room series, I like to exclusively focus on the multiplayer content of the party games that I discuss, since ultimately, that's what party games are all about. However, Mario Party Advance is a real oddity in this series since it's pretty much the only game that really focuses on single-player content more than its multiplayer content. It does have multiplayer modes that we will discuss, but we do need to talk about the single player content here since it makes up such a large chunk of the game. I also didn't want to skip this game since it just feels wrong to leave a game out of a series talking about each Mario Party game. So for this video, think of it as a bit of a detour from the usual format. But without further ado, let's talk about Mario Party Advance, this very strange entry in the series. Mario Party Advance opens up in a very unique way by asking us to create a passport. We'll give our name, standard stuff, give our birth month, I guess, and create our icon. It asks for our hobby, our dream, and our silliest secret. It's so weird that the game asks for this information, but believe it or not, this information will actually be used later. Anyways, after a super invasive opening, we're introduced to Party World, and Bowser immediately crashes the party and absolutely stomps Toad mercilessly. This scatters the Minigames and Gaddgets all over Shroom City, and Koopa Kid threatens us to dare and try to get them back. Shroom City is the main campaign here, and where most players will spend the bulk of their time. We can choose between 4 characters: Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Yoshi. Ultimately, who you pick doesn't really matter too much in the long run, but each player does have a unique start space. So, Shroom City is a big map that functions kind of like a Mario Party board. You have a finite amount of these mushrooms, and each one counts as a turn as you play. You'll consume a mushroom, roll, and repeat. If you run out of mushrooms, it's game over, and you have to restart from your start space, and any ongoing quests you are taking care of are reset, although any quests that you've already completed will remain complete. It's really more of a setback than a true game over. I bet you're thinking to yourself, this doesn't really sound like a Mario Party game at all. Well, Mario Party Advance does treat us to some minigames. Every 3 turns, you'll play a minigame for the opportunity to win 3 mushrooms. Occasionally, you'll have the opportunity to win 6 mushrooms as well. We'll talk about the actual minigames themselves in the minigame section. At first, I found that these minigames were really helpful to keep your head above water, but after a while, they just kinda don't matter anymore, and you'll find yourself needing the extra mushrooms less and less. Every now and then, Koopa Kid will get in your way randomly and either warp you to another space on the map or play you in rock, paper, scissors. If you win, you can continue on your way. If he wins, you could either get blocked or lose a mushroom. This mechanic doesn't really feel like it does anything for the gameplay besides inconvenience the player, honestly. It makes me wonder why it was even implemented at all. There are 4 different space types: normal spaces, which do nothing, dice spaces, which let you roll again, minus spaces, which take away a mushroom, and minigame spaces. Here, you can either get Tumble, who will give you the opportunity to win 2 mushrooms in a minigame, and Koopa Kid will give you a mushroom if you win and take away a mushroom if you lose. The space types on the board are extremely minimal. You'll likely not really focus too heavily on what spaces you land on, maybe avoiding minus spaces. But I ultimately doubt that you'll really care at all about what spaces that you land on, provided that they don't prevent you from getting from point A to point B. So, Shroom City is a large map with tons of places of interest to visit. At each of these places of interest, your goal is to help the citizens with their unique problems, and after doing so, they will reward you with a gadget or a minigame. These quests play out a lot like side quests, with their own little self-contained stories that are pretty unique, honestly. If there is anything that I will praise Mario Party Advance for, it is its charm and its wit. So take this dolphin for example. His issue is that his jokes just don't land very well, and he can't seem to book any comedy shows since his jokes tank. So what you have to do is laugh at his jokes at the moment that you think the punchline is supposed to be. If you laugh at inappropriate times, you'll fail and the crowd will leave. If you succeed, he'll get a huge crowd and a huge confidence boost, kicking off a dolphin's comedy career. In another quest, you'll help a local gambling addict who has lost their money in a desperate attempt to make more, and then in another, you're dancing with spear guys. Not every quest is great. There are a few that just require you to bring a certain character to the quest and then you just win. But if Mario Party Advance has anything going for it, its sense of humor and wit really steal the show here. And this is especially evident during Bowser's quests. After you complete a certain amount of quests, routes open up in the pipe house at the center of Shroom City that allows you to go to a variety of quests centered around Bowser Bowser. And I'm not quite sure why, but Bowser is written in such a funny manner that I love every moment he's on screen. He's always got something funny to say, which really helps to hide the fact that the process of getting to these missions is unnecessarily tedious. There's a little stretch of spaces before each mission that is lined with minus spaces, and if you roll poorly, this can add to a lot of the tedium when actually completing these missions. This is pretty obviously added here to deplete your mushroom count, which, to put it lightly, is a cheap way to pad out the runtime of this campaign. Despite this, I think that Shroom City shines the brightest in its writing. While a lot of these quests are very entertaining to read, not all of them are necessarily very fun to play. There's some that center around the gambling minigames, which are fun. There are a few that require you to partake in a small minigame like a race, which are totally fine. There are some quests where you'll play a duel minigame, but the character you duel isn't the character that you actually play against in the minigame, which just seems a little lazy to me, but whatever. But there are a lot of fetch quests in this game that are way more tedious than fun. A great example of this is probably a robbery. In this quest, Koopa's bank is robbed and the player is tasked to find the culprit. There are 3 suspects and you need to go and visit each one of them, hear their testimonies, then travel all the way back to the bank to guess who you think did it. The worst part is that if you get it wrong, you have to go back through and do the quest all over again. There's lots of quests in this game that are really just fetch quests, asking you to go to the other side of the map to get something or ask a question, then bring that thing back. You can't skip them either. If you want to beat this game, you have to 100% it. You have to beat every single quest. This is already tedious enough, but add in the minigames in between and Koopa Kid warping you for no good reason, and you've got Mario Party Advance, a game that has absolutely no respect for your time. Shroom City really doesn't take that long, maybe a couple of hours, but honestly a lot of that gameplay time feels like unnecessary tedium and padding. There's no real reason to include game overs, massive stretches of minus spaces, and Koopa Kid warping you to the other side of the map besides wasting your time and padding out game length. While Shroom City is charming and unique, I'm hesitant to describe it as good or worth playing. So, as you play through Shroom City, you'll unlock minigames and gadgets, and each of these can be used in a variety of additional modes in Mario Party Advance. The gadgets are kind of just little novelties, nothing too deep, but they're cute little distractions. There are a good amount of them too, 61 in total, although that number is a bit padded by a few stationary posters. The gadgets range from interesting minigames that have you and maybe some friends huddled around a Game Boy playing 4-player pinball or chicken. There's fun little tabletop games like golf and baseball, and goofy distractions like lips that you could sync, a virtual Poochie that you can watch, a stress-relieving Smash compactor, a falling stick. Riveting, I know. While all of these gadgets have the depth of a McDonald's toy, I think that they're a cute distraction, and it's crazy just how many there are here. These feel like they were designed to provide some bites of fun on a road trip or a bus or something in an era where multiplayer was a whole lot more difficult, and the developers needed to get a bit more creative with providing multiplayer fun on the go. This game does support the GBA link cable, which we'll get into later, but the gadgets do provide some pseudo-multiplayer experiences with just one console and one copy of the game. But these are pretty shallow, and most of them pretty much just boil down to dressed up random number generators, so let's move on to the more interesting mini-games. So, for the mini-games, I'll be ranking them on my scale from 1 to 10 and finding the mean, median, and mode, and finding out where Mario Party Advance stacks up against the rest of the series. Mario Party Advance has 50 mini-games, and all of them can be found on the Shroom City board, so that means that there are no omitted mini-games this time around. Mario Party Advance is a weird case here, since its mini-games are almost entirely single-player, are more high-score based, and are on significantly weaker hardware. However, there are certainly some interesting ideas here that are worth discussing. Without further ado, let's rate all of Mario Party Advance's minigames. Boo Bye is a pretty easy minigame where you lure boos to their demise. Grab It is a pretty wonky minigame where you'll dive into rabbits to catch them. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, but you'll likely feel like you have little control over your slide speed when you play this one for the first time. Chomp Walker is a very bland and boring minigame where you have to guide a Chain Chomp but also avoid him too. There are very few obstacles and this minigame is very forgettable. Cloud Climb is a decent but really easy doodle jump type minigame. Barrel Peril is a pretty decent stealth minigame. It's not too hard to time ducking into the barrel, but optimizing this one can be pretty fun. This would be more fun if it was a multiplayer race. Big Popper is a pretty fun minigame where you need to blow bubbles into the sun in the center to try to rack up combos. A problem that I have with this one is that the HUD will cover up some of the bubbles as they fall, which just feels like a weird oversight to me. This is another one that could be fun if it was turned into a multiplayer competition. Forest Jump is a neat platform platforming minigame where you want to jump over logs closer to the edge to gain points while also risking falling off if you get hit. However, it's a little too easy for my liking. Switch Way is a dreadfully boring platforming minigame that poses virtually no challenge besides getting lost in this very bland maze on slow-moving platforms. Amplified is a very vanilla avoid the hazards minigame. I do like that it rewards you for getting close to the lightning bolts though. Fling Shot looks like more fun than it actually is. You'll use these gusts of wind to propel you along, but it feels like, eventually, no matter how well you might be keeping your momentum, the game will just bring you to a screeching halt. It's a very disappointing minigame. Spooky Spike will see you returning beach balls as Boo serves them. It's kinda easy, but works well enough. Ba-Boom is a trial and error puzzle minigame that just isn't very fun to optimize at all. Finding the sweet spots isn't really all that fun or rewarding, and once you do figure them out, this minigame becomes very mundane. Real Cheap is a simple input minigame that is decent but way too easy. Shell Stack is a jump timing minigame that is way too easy. You'd have to try to mess this one up. Bill Bounce is a decent minigame where you need to bounce on bullet bills to rack up points. It's easy, but it rewards your skill by creating huge point increases to help you reach the target score much quicker. Bunny Belt is a pretty good input minigame where you need to input quickly and correctly, and it can be pretty easy to mess this up and not know. This would be a good minigame in a regular Mario Party game where multiple players are competing to produce more bunnies more quickly. Pesticide is a decent reaction minigame that can be a bit easy. Melon Folly is a fun pathing minigame. Sort Stack is a book sorting minigame that just feels like chores. On the Spot is the easiest Simon Says game you'll ever play. Koopa Crunch is a neat little puzzle game that is like a blend of Puyo Puyo and Pack Attack. It's a really neat blend of these two different ideas that works pretty well. It's no Bob-omb Breakers, but it is cool. Floret is an unremarkable elevator attendant minigame. It's just kinda boring and doesn't ever really get interesting. Dreadmill is so easy. These hazards barely even matter. You could hit all of them and make it to the end in time. Stompbot XL is a very boring racing minigame that is insultingly easy in Shroom City. You'd have to try to lose this. Sled Slide is a pretty challenging and slippery racing minigame that actually requires you to use the brakes. Go Go Pogo is just a terrible minigame. The controls feel like garbage and the course is just not fun to platform through. This feels like playing a Little Timmy level in Mario Maker on a pogo stick. Just not fun at all. Flippin' Out works pretty well, is easy to understand, and is an interesting premise. This would be pretty fun in a larger multiplayer course. Sea Monkey is really easy as long as you can follow a basic path. Out of My Way somehow turns the premise of an enemy-filled obstacle course into a slow, monotonous mess. Broom Zoom is a fun and simple minigame, but it's really easy to just never get hit. Tank Down is a pretty interesting usage of the fact that both players are looking at their own screens, but it's just really boring and slow. Hammergeddon is a mindless minigame where you throw hammers at your opponent. It rewards campy strategies too much. Stare Scare is a mashing minigame, which doesn't feel very good on a Game Boy Advance. Chicken is a game of chicken. It's okay, I guess. Not much to really say on this one. Chainsaw is an L&R masher on a Game Boy Advance with stamina. The scenario is funny and medieval, but this minigame isn't very fun to actually play. Volleybomb is an okay 2D adaptation of volleyball, but I just hate that the bomb will arbitrarily blow up when it feels like it and make you lose that point for no good reason. I do somewhat understand why they did this, since the minigame would probably go on forever if the bomb didn't explode, but that solution just feels like a salt-encrusted bandage onto a wound. Koopa Curl is a fun curling minigame that can get competitive. I like this one. Slammer is a pretty basic reaction minigame. Press A if it's your picture, press B if it's your opponent. I just can't help but feel like you spend more time watching this roulette play than doing anything interesting in this minigame. Mush Rush is a defensive minigame where you have to swat a horde of Koopa Kids away. Your hammer swings just don't feel very effective, and it feels random regarding if you knock the Koopa Kid off the path or just knock them back a few feet. Crushed Ice has a similar problem to Mush Rush, where I cannot for the life of me figure out any consistency between actually defeating these Koopa Kids or knocking them down. It feels like no matter what angle or speed I hit these Koopa Kids at, it doesn't matter. They either survive or they don't. This one is worse too because you then have to keep circling around to get them a second time if you don't actually knock them out. Peek and Sneak is a pretty decent stealth minigame that's just a bit too easy. Splatterball is a decent shooting minigame, but the reloading process is so slow and it drags the minigame's pace down. I feel like if the reloading was faster and the arena was bigger, this would be more fun. Trap Floor is an endurance test. How long can you just keep pressing BA in a very slow and boring minigame? Koopa Kappa is a fun reaction minigame that can get fast if there's lots of Koopa Kids, but 5 lives is a lot. You likely won't lose this one. Match 'em is a very boring take on slots. Watch 'em is a very easy shell game. Drop 'em is a pachinko game that isn't half bad. Stop 'em is a simple roulette that does its job of being a roulette. Pair 'em is a matching minigame that is about as fun as 52 Pickup. Scratch 'em is a scratch-off ticket. You scratch off the scratch-off ticket. It's as fun as it sounds. And that's all of the minigames in Mario Party Advance. Mario Party Advance has a pretty underwhelming score of 3.8, with a median of 4 and a mode of 5. That places Mario Party Advance as the second worst ranking game in our series thus far, just above Mario Party 1. This was kind of crazy to me. I was totally anticipating that Mario Party Advance would be the lowest ranked game in this series, since it's mostly made up of single-player minigames. But there were some surprisingly fun ones in here. I do think that Mario Party 1 has some good minigames like Shy Guy Says and Mushroom Mix-Up, but Mario Party 1 struggles a lot with some painful minigames, some horribly balanced minigames, and it was also the first of its kind. So it was still really figuring out what a Mario Party minigame really looked like. Mario Party Advance is weird, since it is mostly comprised of single-player, high-score based minigames, but the biggest downfall for these is just that they're way too easy. I know that this is a baby game, and it's pretty obvious that Mario Party Advance is aimed at an even younger crowd than even the other Mario Party games are. However, there are some cool ideas in here, and with some tweaking, I bet minigames like Bill Bounce and Big Popper could be adapted into fun and interesting multiplayer minigames in a more traditional Mario Party. But anyways, the minigame selection here is okay. Not really offensive, but far from the best minigame set in the series. So, after you beat Shroom City, what else is there to do? Well, truthfully, Mario Party Advance tries really hard to provide some interesting multiplayer modes to try out, but it's still pretty limited by its hardware. Multiplayer wasn't a very easy thing to do, so the developers gave players a few options to play this game with friends, with or without additional cartridges and/or consoles. If you had a Game Boy Advance, you likely remember the GBA link cable. This was used to create multiplayer experiences on the Game Boy Advance, and although this was way outdone by the incredibly innovative feature that was DS Download Play, the GBA link cable worked well enough to get some friends together to play a round of Mario Bros. Or Mario Kart Super Circuit. So, naturally, Mario Party Advance uses the link cable in a few ways too. You can send a minigame or a gadget to a friend who doesn't have the game so they can play it, although when I did this, the minigames and gadgets didn't have any sound. This is a neat little feature that allows other players to basically try a demo of the minigames or gadgets. You can also play dual minigames with a friend with just one cartridge, which is pretty nifty. There's also Multi-Pack Penguin Race, where you can assert your dominance by having your minigame records race up to 3 other players with their own copies of the game. Whoever's minigame records are better will win. This is just a very, very complicated way to flex on your friends, and I kinda love that Mario Party Advance has the audacity to include something like this. There's also Secret Battle, where you'll play to a set number of wins and the player who wins gets to see the other player's secret. So hopefully your secret isn't embarrassing, or you better play the best games of Mario Party Advance of your life. Mini Bowser Battle is the final minigame mode that can be played with 2 game packs. You'll choose how many Koopa Kids to wager in a minigame, you'll set a multiplier, and if you win, you'll gain that number of Koopa Kids. The first player whose Koopa Kid count reaches 0 loses. It's an okay idea, but it can drag on for way too long. The multiplayer offerings here are just kind of minimalistic. They fulfill the obligation of using the GBA link cable, but outside of Multi-Pack Penguin Race, they don't really do much of anything new or really worth going through the hassle of playing it. If you only have one console, you can play a 100-player battle or a 100-player attack, where you could theoretically gather up to 100 people to play Mario Party Advance and either try to dethrone a player's high score in a particular minigame or try to beat another player's minigame win streak. You'll set the number of players and pass the Game Boy Advance around to everybody in the circle, so next time you go to a party, I guess you could try to see if everybody there wants to get in a circle and pass around the Mario Party Advance. This is a neat way to provide a theoretical multiplayer experience without additional consoles or a link cable, but it's also not super practical unless if you're in a super specific situation where you have a ton of people bored at a family reunion and you want to entertain everybody with one copy of Mario Party Advance. I respect the effort though. There's one final multiplayer mode, but I'm saving that for its own section towards the end here. Since this game is more single player focused, there are a couple of single player minigame modes that are worth discussing in Challenge Land. In Challenge Land, you can test your skills in the minigames to compete for coins to purchase more gadgets. Firstly, there's Minigame Attack. In this mode, you will be playing through a minigame gauntlet trying to rack up 15 consecutive wins. It's kinda structured like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, interestingly. You'll pick the minigame that you think that you can win out of a set of 3. Each consecutive win will be worth more and more coins, and you can choose to bail out and take the coins that you've earned at any time. If you lose all of the coins that you've earned up until that point. You could win up to 100,000 coins if you win all minigames, which can actually be kind of tough. You also have some lifelines available in the form of a practice card, which allows you to practice the minigame beforehand, change, which allows you to change out the set of minigames, and replay, which adds 2 minigames that you've previously won to the selection of minigames. This is a really neat little challenging mode, and this provides lots of replay value for players who are looking for some challenge in this game. There's also the Game Room, where you can play the gambling minigames but for actual spendable coins. Dual Dash is also a mode where you'll play play dual minigames against a CPU. You can pick between 3 difficulties where you'll need to beat the CPU in 3, 5, or 8 minigames in a row to earn some coins. It's okay. Nothing special. There's also Bowser Land. In Bowser Land, the player is on a track trying to get to Bowser in a certain number of turns. You'll roll, travel a certain number of spaces, then stop at a station. You'll then play a Koopa Kid minigame. Koopa Kid will roll a random number to see how many Koopa Kids you'll be up against, then you'll play the minigame. If you win, you can roll again and continue. If you lose, the game ends and you get nothing. You win a payout if you're able to make it to the end of the track and reach Bowser. This is all well and good, but this mode has so much random garbage that makes it totally unfun to play. If you make it to the end too quickly or too slowly, Bowser will arbitrarily decrease your payment for no good reason. Why was this added to a perfectly fine mode? It just reinforces the idea that Mario Party Advance loves to waste your time, which deters me from ever suggesting that anybody plays this mode. The single player minigame modes are just kind of alright. Minigame Attack is the obvious winner for me, but unfortunately, Mario Party Advance doesn't really have much substance outside of Shroom City. However, there is one final mode that we should talk about before we wrap up. So, Mario Party Advance comes packaged with something called the bonus board. It's a physical game board that can coincide with the bonus board mode in the game. You and 3 other players can choose a character, and you can roll, play gadgets, and gather stars all on the Game Boy Advance alongside the board. Now, Mario Party Advance does encourage you to kind of create your own rules, I guess, but there is a set of standardized rule sets that you can use. At the start of the game, you'll place the star on one of the 4 star spaces. Your ultimate goal, like in regular Mario Party, is to get a star. However, once a player acquires a star, the game ends. There are 5 different types of spaces. Yellow spaces do nothing, EGAD spaces will allow all players to play a gadget, and depending on the results of the gadget, this can cause a variety of effects to occur to the player who wins or loses. I've attached a scan to the game manual if you want to play this for yourself, since this information is only in the manual and is not found anywhere in the actual game. There are star warp spaces, which will move the star card, pipe spaces, which will warp you to a corresponding pipe, and the aforementioned star space, where you'll take a chance at picking a chest, one of which has a star. I just want to say, it's really neat that this was included with Mario Party Advance. It's a really cool little way to include multiplayer out of the box, even if it's kind of underwhelming in my personal opinion. The board is about as deep and interesting as a board game on the back of a cereal box, and it pretty much just involves rolling over and over again and getting lucky. This is a really clever usage of the gadgets though, and while it's nothing really special, the bonus board is a cute novelty. If you are interested in playing this for some reason, I've attached a recreation of this board in Tabletop Simulator that you can use if you're interested. I'm not really sure how to rate Mario Party Advance on its beginner friendliness. I can't really recommend that you play this game with friends because it's a challenge to do so and there's not even very much multiplayer content. I'd honestly recommend that you just skip this game entirely if you were even considering playing it. There are other handheld entries that we will explore later that stand alongside the console entries, but for Mario Party Advance, I don't feel like this game is even in the same ballpark. Mario Party Advance is a really weird little game. It's a party game for significantly weaker hardware that almost feels like it was made to prove a point. It has a lot of clever ideas packed into it, and there's tons of charm and wit in its writing, but when it comes to the actual moment-to-moment gameplay, it's a stark departure from what defines Mario Party and tends to get really repetitive and monotonous. However, I can't really bring myself to say that I hate this game or anything like that. It's very flawed, but I see lots of ideas in here that could have worked in either a console Mario Party game or maybe just a different game altogether. It's probably not a big shock that Mario Party Advance is the weakest game in my series ranking thus far. However, it's also a bit of a weird comparison to make, so take that with a grain of salt. On the next episode of Mark's Rec Room, we're going back to consoles to discuss Mario Party 7, the final Mario Party game on the GameCube that has a lot of room to push the series forward, but also has the difficult task of following up Mario Party 6. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.